I never meant for any of it to happen. He was older, confident, my mom's boyfriend. But the way he looked at me that night, it wasn't just casual. It felt like he saw something in me that none else ever did. Welcome to Hidden Gay Chronicle, where secrets unfold and emotions get real. Subscribe for stories that feel so real, they can't be made up. I was 19, still living at home, not because I wanted to, but because I didn't have anywhere else to go. College hadn't worked out, and figuring out life felt impossible when you already felt invisible. That was me. Quiet, awkward, always watching life happen from the sidelines. Then came him. His name was Leo. He was the kind of guy people noticed. Maybe late 30s, calm, confident, with an easy smile. My mom met him through her office. He was a contractor, the kind who could fix almost anything. I didn't pay much attention at first. I'd seen too many of my mom's relationships come and go. But Leo was different. He noticed things too, like how I never really joined in at dinner, always ate quickly and disappeared to my room, or how I avoided eye contact. I thought I was being invisible, but he saw right through it. One night, he knocked on my door. Not loud, just enough for me to take off my headphones. "You always hide in here?" he asked, leaning against the doorway. "Just not a dinner table kind of guy," I shrugged. He nodded, then pointed at my controller. "You game." That night, we played for hours. He wasn't great, huh? But he was patient, funny, easy to be around. For the first time in a long while, I felt seen. After that, things changed in small ways. He'd ask how my day was. Offered to help when I was fixing my old laptop. Once he brought Emmy a coffee when I was up late editing photos. Small things. But when you're used to being overlooked, small things feel big. One weekend, my mom went out of town to visit her sister. It was just me and Leo at home. The first night, he decided to cook real food, not frozen stuff. We had pasta, and he even let me have a little wine. Then, we ended up watching a crime docu series on the couch. Between episodes, he asked softly. "You ever been in love?" I laughed. "I don't think so." He looked thoughtful. "It can be confusing when you're young, especially when no one talks about it." Something about the way he said it stuck with me. Not in a weird way, just real, like he understood something I hadn't figured out yet. Later that night, I realized my bedroom door was slightly open. I always closed it before bed. Leo was standing in the hallway, calm, just checking in. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded. He smiled a little. "Get some sleep, kid. You think too much." And then he gently closed the door. The air felt heavier after he closed my door, like something in the room had changed. It wasn't cold, but it wasn't comfortable either. My skin buzzed and my heartbeat wouldn't slow down. Leo didn't move right away. He just stood there, quiet, calm, giving me time to speak, but I couldn't. My voice didn't trust me. "You okay?" he asked softly. I nodded, though I wasn't sure. He took a step closer, slow and careful, like he didn't want to startle me. The space between us felt different. Not about distance, but about everything we weren't saying. "I'm not going to do anything you don't want," he said. His voice stayed low, steady, reassuring. He wasn't crossing a line. He was drawing one, making sure I knew I had control. I didn't know what I felt. Not fear, but not calm either. Just confusion and something deeper I couldn't name. Then he reached out and rested his hand on my arm. Not forceful, not romantic, just grounding, like he was reminding me I wasn't invisible. "I see you," he said quietly. Those 3 words hit harder than I expected. For a second, the noise in my head stopped. I looked at him. Really looked. The lines near his eyes, the tired kindness in his face, the weight he carried but never talked about. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel alone. I leaned forward slightly, not into him, just close enough to feel that warmth, that quiet reassurance that I mattered to someone. "You should get some rest," he murmured. I didn't answer. I didn't want the moment to break. But he stepped back anyway, gave me a faint smile, and left the door half open. Maybe to remind me I could always choose what came next. That night, sleep didn't come easy. My mind kept replaying the way he'd said, "I see you." The next morning, things felt different. Not bad, just real. He was in the kitchen making coffee. The light hit him in that quiet morning way, familiar, ordinary. Morning, he said, like last night, hadn't happened. Hey, I replied, trying to sound normal. He handed me a cup without asking, and for a few minutes we just sat there, insolence. It wasn't awkward as it was understanding. Then he spoke. Last night, I didn't make you uncomfortable, did I? I shook my head. No, you didn't. He nodded slowly. Good. I'd never want Toby another reason you shut the door. And that was it. No lines crossed. Just two people trying to understand something bigger than they could explain. Something had shifted, and it wasn't going back. We didn't talk much that day. Just watched TV, ate leftovers, pretending everything was the same. But it wasn't. The silence between us felt charged, like every small thing suddenly meant more. That night, I couldn't sleep. My door was cracked open just a little. I didn't know if he'd come by, but around midnight, I heard soft footsteps in the hallway. Then he was there again, standing in the doorway, calm but thoughtful. He stepped inside quietly and sat at the edge of my bed. Not close, just near enough to feel his presence. I couldn't sleep, he said. Me either, I whispered. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then I asked, Is this wrong? He took a breath. It's complicated, he said softly. But not wrong to care about someone. I looked at him through the dim light and finally said what I'd been holding in for years. I don't want to feel invisible anymore. His jaw tightened, like those words hit something deep inside him. He reached out and rested his hand gently over mine. Not possessive, just reassuring. You're not invisible, he said. Not Tome, that simple touch broke something open in me. All I felt was the relief of being seen, of knowing someone noticed. We sat there quietly, hands linked, hearts pounding for reasons neither of us could explain. He leaned forward until our forehead touched a simple human closeness that said more than words ever could. You're allowed to feel, he whispered. I couldn't answer. My throat was tight, caught between wanting to cry and wanting to stay in that moment forever. But he didn't move. He just stayed still, letting the silence do the talking. When he finally stood up, I surprised myself. Wait, I said. He turned. You can stay, I told him. Not like that, just stay. He studied me for a moment. You sure? I nodded. So he lay down beside me, fully dressed, both of us facing opposite directions, but breathing the same air. No words, no movement, just quiet understanding. For the first time in years, I fell asleep feeling safe. In the morning, he was gone, but he'd folded a blanket at the end of my bed and left the door slightly open. That small gesture said everything, close but careful, caring without crossing a line, and somehow that made me want to understand him even more. Later that day, I heard my mom's keys in the door, her voice mixing with Leo's in the kitchen, and I froze. Everything felt sharp again. I stayed in my room for hours, headphones on, pretending the world didn't exist. When I finally came out for water, Leo was on the couch, a movie playing low. Mom had already gone to bed. He glanced up, gave me a small nod. Nothing big, just, I see you. I sat at the far end of the couch. My heart was racing even though nothing was happening. After a while, he passed Meath's blanket from his side. I pulled it over my legs. 2 feet between us and it felt like there was an ocean of words we didn't know how to say. During a quiet part of the movie, he whispered, You okay? I nodded. You? He smiled faintly, trying to be. That silence said everything. He was trying not to blur lines, trying to stay decent. And somehow that made me respect him even more, because for once someone was choosing to care without taking something back. I shifted a little closer, not out of impulse, but out of comfort. And for the first time, he didn't move away. He just stayed present, calm. Later that night, I met him in the hallway. He looked tired, hair a mess, eyes heavy. You should get some sleep, he said. I know, I replied, then added quietly, Thanks for not giving up on me. He leaned against the wall, exhaled. Hey, we're both figuring things out. I smiled. Yeah, maybe we are. Then he gave me a small nod, the kind that says we'll be okay, and walked off to his room. That night, I finally slept. Not because everything made sense, but because for once I didn't feel invisible. I stopped him before he could leave. You asked me, I said quietly, and I said, yes. He looked at me like he was searching my face for regret. There wasn't any. If you regret it, it'd just say so. He shook his head. No, that's the problem. I leaned against the counter, my heartbeat echoing in my ears. Then what is the problem? Hello at once, dry, tired. You're you, and I'm not supposed to feel this way. Those words hit harder than I expected. Why not? I asked. Because of everything, he said. Because I'm part of this family now. Because I'm older. Because I should know better. He paused, then admitted. And because I think about you more than I should. The room went quiet. Now, Thevi, just real. Someone was finally saying the truth out loud. I stepped forward, careful, deliberate, then stopped, trying to pretend it isn't there. He looked at me. No smile, no disguise. If I stay here, I might cross a line. I can't uncross. My chest tightened. You're leaving, I hesitated. Maybe I should. Don't, he said before I could stop myself. He looked up again, eyes uncertain. I don't want you to go, I whispered. Then tell me what I'm supposed to do. Stay, I said. But stay because it matters. Because we both need to figure out who we are without breaking anyone else. For a moment, he just stood there, torn between what he wanted and what was right. Then he nodded slowly. Okay, he said. I'll stay. But we keep the line clear. Promise me that? I nodded. Promise? He gave a faint, sad smile. Good. Because caring about you doesn't have to mean crossing that line. He stepped back, hands trembling a little. Get some sleep, he said softly. I watched him walk away, the weight in my chest shifting. Less heat, more ache. The next day, the distance between us felt different. Not guilt, not shame, just quiet understanding. We talked less, but every word mattered more. Mom was cheerful planning dinner, unaware of the storm under her roof. And maybe that was for the best, because wanting something doesn't mean you have to take it. Sometimes the hardest kind of love is the one you learn to walk away from. He looked at me, voice rough. I need to hear you say it. Say what? I asked. That you want this too. That it's not just some fantasy. I took a breath, stepped close enough to see every flicker in his eyes. I've never wanted anything more in my life. He exhaled like he'd been holding that breath for months. Then he pulled me into a hug that felt like both an ending and a beginning. There, in the dim light of the garage, it wasn't about guilt anymore. It was about two people finally telling the truth. He rested his forehead against mine. This shouldn't feel right, he whispered. But it does, I said. There was no music, no storm, no movie moment, just silence, heavy and real. His hands shook slightly when he touched my arm, like he was memorizing what honesty felt like. My chest tightened. I didn't know what to do with the warmth rising inside me or the fear that came with it. I don't know how to stop wanting this, he said quietly. I didn't answer because I didn't either. He sat down on the old couch in the corner, motioned for me to sit too. The air between us buzzed with everything unsaid. I've never felt this before, I admitted. He looked at me with something close to sorrow. Then we have to be careful. What we feel doesn't mean we can have it. His words hit hard, but they were true. I nodded, trying not to let my voice shake. I know, I whispered. But it doesn't make it easier. He smiled faintly, sad, but honest. No, it never does. We sat there for a long moment, not touching, just breathing the same air, hearts loud enough to drown the silence. Then the front door slammed. Babe, it was my mom's voice. We froze. He stood instantly, straightened his shirt. Goop stairs, he whispered. Now I did, pulse racing. By the time I reached my room, she was walking down the hall. Hey, sweetheart, you seen James? He forced my voice steady. No, maybe he's in the garage. Thanks, she said, casual as ever. I sat on my bed, trembling, trying to catch my breath. Not from fear, but from knowing how close we'd come to crossing a line we could never uncross. Dinner that night was painfully normal. James joked about the pasta being overcooked, and Mom laughed. But between us, the air was thick with everything we didn't say. Wanting, regret, restraint, because love, the real kind, isn't always about having someone. Sometimes it's about knowing when to stop before you break what can't be fixed. My mom laughed and I felt something twist inside me. I wanted to scream, to tell her everything, how confused I was, how none of this should have happened. But she looked so happy, and I hated that I couldn't be the reason she stayed that way. After dinner, I went up to my room. Didn't wait for him. Didn't leave the door cracked. I sat there in the dark trying to figure out where I'd lost control of the story. Then my phone buzzed. I'm not going to pretend I didn't feel what I felt, but we have to be careful. I'm not disappearing. I just need time. You mean too much to me to ruin this? I stared at the message for a long time before replying, okay, just don't disappear completely. His answer came fast. Never. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't simple, but it was something. And at that point, I didn't need fireworks, just the quiet relief of knowing I hadn't imagined it. Because real connection isn't just what happens in secret. It's what survives when the truth comes out. The next morning felt heavy, like I'd woken up with a secret stitched into my skin. He was in the kitchen laughing with my mom as if nothing had changed. Maybe that was what hurt most, how easily he could slide back into the role she gave him. To her, he was calm and reliable. To me, he was a question I couldn't answer. When our eyes met, even for a second, I saw it. The guilt, the pull, the ache we were both trying to bury. Days passed like that. He kept his distance, spoke kindly, smiled easily. And me? I started wondering if I'd made it all up. But one night, when the house went quiet, he knocked softly on my door. He didn't speak, just stood there, looking lost. I opened the door wider, unsure what I was inviting. He stepped in, sat on the edge of my bed, and said quietly, I tried to stay away. I met his eyes and managed a small smile. You did a good job. And for the first time, I realized he wasn't my secret anymore. He was just a person, flawed, scared, and trying to do the right thing. And maybe that had to be enough. He smirked, but his eyes were heavy. Didn't feel good, he said quietly. I know, I replied. Then he looked straight at me. Do you hate me? No, I said instantly. I just don't know what we are anymore. He reached out and held my hand. Not like a lover, but like someone holding onto the last bit of truth they'd left. I don't know either, he whispered. But when I'm near you, I feel seen alive. Like I'm not just pretending. My chest tightened because no one had ever said that to me before. Not a friend, not anyone. I leaned forward, resting my forehead against his shoulder. No words, no explanations. I'm just quiet understanding. And in that silence, it didn't matter how wrong or complicated it looked on the outside. It was just two people who finally saw each other clearly. He stayed that night, not for anything physical, but just to be close, to breathe the same air, to let the world fade for a while. When I woke up the next morning, he was still there, peaceful, maybe for the first time in a long time. Later, we talked, really talked about my mom, about what comes next. He said he was ending things, and not because of me, but because he couldn't keep living a lie. She deserves someone who's really in it, he said. And I'm not. And me? I asked quietly. He met my eyes. You're the only thing that's made me feel real lately. It wasn't easy after that. There were arguments, distance, awkward silences, but he moved out, started fresh, and for the first time, I started to breathe again, too. Months later, we crossed paths again. Two different people now. No secrets, no fear, just quiet gratitude for what we'd learned, because looking back, that story wasn't about forbidden love. It was about connection, honesty, and learning when to let go. Real love doesn't always arrive when it's convenient. It finds you when you're ready to see yourself through someone else's eyes. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away before it breaks you. So if this hits somewhere deep, if you've ever cared for someone you couldn't keep, you're not alone. Love doesn't always mean forever. Sometimes it just means finally feeling seen. If this story spoke to you, hit like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. This was my story.